Hey there. On Sunday evening, United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo made it known that he was going to designate the Houthis, the government of the majority of the Yemeni people, as a terrorist organization. I've already spoken about this at great length on this channel in recent weeks, so rather than focus on the designation itself and the horrifying aspects that it will have, the horrifying consequences that it will have, I want to focus a little bit on Mike Pompeo himself and what this man is. Because to me, Mike Pompeo is evil. That's a very strong term, but I think that certainly with this action and with many other actions, Mike Pompeo has earned that designation. I think the first thing you need to know about Mike Pompeo is that he has survived for 4 years in the Donald Trump administration. This is a tremendously difficult thing to do. Many have tried, some out of some kind of misguided conviction that they were serving their country, some out of some weird ideological convictions. A wide array of people have tried to work for Donald Trump, and almost all of them have failed. Mike Pompeo stands out in that regard. He started out as Donald Trump's director of the Central Intelligence Agency at the beginning of Trump's term, and then he was elevated to the position of the Secretary of State. I think the Vice President has superseded this office in many people's minds as the stepping stone to the presidency, but the fact remains that the Secretary of State, the State Department, is one of the most powerful positions you can have in the U.S. government. And Mike Pompeo had done essentially nothing to earn that position. He was a failed defense contractor. He was a part of the more hardline faction in the U.S. House of Representatives for a rather brief period of time. Basically, he has distinguished himself and proven himself by being the most craven lickspittle imaginable when it comes to Donald Trump. The New Yorker magazine published a, I think, unattributed quote, supposedly from a U.S. ambassador, saying that Mike Pompeo is a guided missile for Donald Trump's ass. The man has done nothing with his time in power other than promote himself and promote his boss. And that second bit is the important bit, because he has promoted his boss. Mike Pompeo understood quite fully what it took to get ahead in the Donald Trump administration, and he has done it. Because Mike Pompeo has no principles or no priorities other than his furthering his own political ambitions. He has been a miraculous success. His time at the State Department has been one of extraordinarily humiliation for the United States. Our failure to deal with the coronavirus epidemic any better than really anybody. It was among the worst reactions in the entire world as one of the richest and best resourced countries in the world. Mike Pompeo is not directly responsible for that, but yeah, as the administration that still oversees many aspects of who comes in and out of this country, it's very much his failure as well. You moving on to things that are directly about what a Secretary of State is in charge of. In these final weeks, in these final months of the Trump administration, we have an now openly, cheerfully genocidal Chinese state that is signing economic, trade, and investment agreements with all of our closest allies. I think that's probably a rational decision that they're making, but whether you think that's a rational decision that they are making, or whether you think it's some kind of horrific betrayal, regardless, it's Mike Pompeo's fault. He was the guy in charge here. Yet he's spent the past couple weeks running around on Twitter and running around the world trying to take some kind of victory lap, claiming some kind of moral superiority and success. What he's been doing is he has been kowtowing and abasing himself before Donald Trump for 4 years in some kind of sick audition to be president himself. He's going to run again. I think it's quite clear to most, seems likely to me, I've been wrong before, that his attempt to get the Republican nomination is going to fail utterly. But what we're seeing in real time is a man who is selling his soul and selling his country down the river in the hopes of one day, hopefully, having a shot at being the most powerful man in the world. I mean, this is to use an overused turn of phrase, this is a Faustian bargain. This is a guy who is selling his soul. And it would be bad enough if he was just running around the world on a victory tour, but he's actively sabotaging the next president. There's no question here. I think it was Emma Ashford who pointed this out on Twitter, that what he is doing is he is consciously creating news hooks for right-wing media in the next administration. He has added Cuba back onto the state sponsors of terrorism list, which is ridiculous. Cuba does not sponsor terrorism, has not for decades. Crucially, that is very distinct from being designated as a foreign terrorist organization, as I'll cover again at the end of this. He basically is doing that to make it harder for Biden to pursue rational foreign policy in Latin America. He's creating a news hook. So when Biden eventually, as is only sane, takes Cuba back off of that list, Breitbart and the other news outlets that Pompeo wants to help will be able to say, look how friendly Biden and the Democrats are to Cuba. There's no purpose to any of the things that he is doing in these closing weeks other than sabotaging the next administration. It's vile what this man is doing. And it's also key to point out, while he's doing this, he's taking a victory lap. He is, throughout his time in power, and again, the Secretary of State is one of the most powerful seats in the entire U.S. government. He's been using it to celebrate himself. He's been using State Department funds to organize celebratory dinners about himself with influencers in Washington, D.C. It's just vile what this man is doing. And I think at this point I will turn to the direct effects of this decision to add Yemen to the foreign terrorist organization list. Again, that's distinct from the more wishy-washy state sponsors of terrorism list, which acknowledges that, okay, maybe these people sponsor terrorism, but people still live there that might have to be dealt with. No, with the Yemen designation as a foreign terrorist organization, this designation of the Houthis, who govern 70 to 80% of all the people in Yemen, he is saying that people are not allowed to do business with the entity that controls 70 to 80% of Yemenis. This means, practically speaking, that humanitarian organizations are not going to be allowed to deal with the Houthis, are not going to be able to feed and clothe and provide medical services to the 70 to 80% of the Yemeni population that lives under the Houthis. This means that for a country where the estimates are hard to say, it's hard to actually quantify this, many estimate that 25 million people are reliant to some degree on humanitarian spending. This morning on Twitter, Senator Chris Murphy pointed out it's not just the humanitarian organizations who are no longer going to be willing to deal with the Houthis. Regular commercial food providers, food importers also will not want to deal with the Houthis because they will become vulnerable to sanctions for dealing with a foreign terrorist organization. Basically, the Yemenis, this is, I believe, over the past couple of years, it is believed, this is, distinct from the war, distinct from the cholera, distinct from the COVID, but over the past 3 years, somewhere in the realm of 85,000 Yemeni children have starved to death. And that's when they had access to humanitarian goods. We are talking about this one action that Mike Pompeo took against the wishes of both houses of Congress, against the wishes really even of the U.S. military-industrial complex that recognizes that what's going on with the Saudi invasion of Yemen is a horrific crime. Pompeo took this action to serve the Saudis and to screw Joe Biden, and in the process, he could murder millions more Yemeni women, children. This is human evil staring us in the face. And he's going to somehow walk into the Republican primary fight in 2 years' time, expecting to be lauded for this horror. It's human evil defined. And this is utterly unprecedented. There is a state sponsor of terrorism list that has, caveats and this, that, and the other thing, and certain people become sanctioned. This is something that has never been applied to an entire government before. The Trump administration also very unwisely added a part of the Iranian military to this list, which then provided part of the justification for assassinating the second most powerful person in the Iranian government when he was on his way to peace talks in Iraq. A man, by the way, who was much more responsible for defeating the Islamic State than anybody in the US government or military. So there was a precedent set by the Trump administration for taking out one part of an official state military and designating that as a foreign terrorist organization. And out of that, we almost got another $1 trillion war in the Middle East. This with the Houthis, with an entity that, again, is the Yemeni government. The Houthis are the government of the vast majority of Yemenis. They have been for 6 or 7 years now. Saudi Arabia, allied with the United States, allied with Al-Qaeda, allied with the Islamic State, with actual terrorist organizations, has attempted to invade Yemen over the past 6 and 7 years and has failed miserably. The Saudis are humiliated. The Saudis are now in a point where they're going to have to start suing for peace. The Biden administration is less sympathetic to the Saudis because it would be impossible not to be less sympathetic to the Saudis than the Trump-Pompeo administration that has been bought out by the Saudis has been. And the Saudis know that they're going to have a very difficult time going forward, and the Houthis have a very good case to make. So Pompeo gave them a gift. He called the Houthis a terrorist organization. And the result, not 100% certain, but is very likely, the result is likely to be the death of another million people. This is evil. In the name of political ambition, in the name of getting a little bit more money from his boss, slightly increasing the chances of a Trump Tower Riyadh, Mike Pompeo has chosen to take an action that is almost guaranteed to murder hundreds of thousands, if not millions. Mike Pompeo is human evil defined. That's something that I think we should all remember as we go forward. Just how monstrous this person is, and how happy we should be that he will be out of power on January 21st, and how hard we should work to ensure that everybody knows exactly what Mike Pompeo is when he attempts to weasel his way back into power, either in the Republican primary for president, which strikes me as likely to fail, or in some future Republican administration. I hate to rant, but this is something that deserved to be ranted about. We'll return back to better produced content in the coming weeks, but felt like this was something that needed to be said. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Click on the link here if you want a free essay on a completely different topic. If you sign up there, you'll be signing up for my email list. Thanks.